All right, let's dive into an absolutely epic story of transformation. We're going to journey across the Indian subcontinent, from humanity's earliest struggles to survive, all the way to the birth of incredible cities and ideas that would change the world forever.
For a long time, the colonial story was that India's history was just stuck, waiting for outsiders to civilize it. Well, that entire myth was completely blown out of the water in 1921. The discovery of a huge ancient city called Harappa proved something amazing. While parts of Europe were still in their early stages, a highly advanced urban culture was already thriving right here. It totally flipped that condescending idea of a white man's burden on its head.
But to really appreciate the genius behind these ancient cities, we can't just start with a final product. Nope. We have to rewind the clock. Way, way back to the very dawn of humanity's journey on the subcontinent, where the first seeds of civilization were just starting to sprout. Now, try to wrap your head around this. For an incredible 99% of human history, life was a raw, daily fight for survival. We call it the Stone Age not because it was simple, but because your entire world, your food, your shelter, your very existence depended on the tools you could painstakingly make from stone, wood, and bone. The time scale here is just staggering. I mean, look at that first period, the Paleolithic. It covers almost 3 million years. That's practically our entire story as a species, living as nomadic hunter-gatherers. All the revolutionary stuff we're about to talk about, it all happened in that tiny little sliver at the very end. It really puts everything into perspective, doesn't it? And this brings us to what might just be the single biggest game changer in all of human history. The Neolithic, or New Stone Age, wasn't just about having better, sharper tools. Oh no. This was a complete revolution in our relationship with the planet. It was the exact moment we went from being shaped by nature to actively shaping it ourselves. The contrast is it's night and day. On one side, you have a life that's constantly on the move. On the other, you have the settled life of a food producer. Suddenly, people are farming crops like wheat and barley. They're building the first permanent villages, and they're even creating pottery to store extra food. This wasn't just a new lifestyle, this was the very foundation that all future civilizations will be built on. So those Neolithic foundations didn't just lead to a few small improvements, they set off a quantum leap. Over in the Indus River Valley, an entire civilization popped up that took this whole idea of settled life and scaled it up into something the world had truly never seen before: India's first real cities. The planning here is absolutely mind-blowing. Cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa were built on a precise grid system, kind of like a modern city like Chandigarh. They had sophisticated underground drainage systems and were often split into two parts: a fortified citadel, probably for the rulers, and a lower town for everybody else. For its time, this level of engineering was just, wow, nothing short of remarkable. And yet, for all their brilliance, this civilization is wrapped in mystery. I mean, who were these people? What did they believe in? We really don't know because we've never been able to decipher their writing. And just as mysteriously as they appeared, their incredible cities slowly declined and were abandoned, leaving us with one of history's greatest puzzles. So as the great Indus cities faded into memory, a new sound began to drift across northern India. It was the sound of a completely new culture. These were semi-nomadic people who brought new gods, sacred hymns they'd passed down for generations, and a totally new way of organizing society. This was the dawn of the Vedic Age. Our main window into this world comes from the Vedas, which are this huge collection of sacred texts. And get this, for hundreds of years, they weren't even written down. They were composed and memorized, passed on orally, word for word, from teacher to student. The oldest one, the Rig Veda, gives us this amazing glimpse into what that early society was like. Over the next 1,000 years, this society went through a massive transformation. What started as small, kinship-based tribes, where your wealth was literally measured by how many cows you had, well, it evolved. Hereditary kings took the place of elected chiefs, iron plows completely changed farming, and a rigid four-part social hierarchy, the Varna system, started to take shape. The whole society was moving towards more structure, more complexity. But whenever things get too rigid, you're bound to see some pushback. As the religious rituals got more and more complex and society got more and more structured, a powerful wave of questioning started sweeping across the Gangetic Plains. People started asking, hey, is this the only way? And all of that spiritual questioning gave birth to some truly radical new belief systems. Thinkers like Mahavira and the Buddha came along and offered totally different answers to life's biggest questions. They created new paths to what they called liberation, freedom from suffering. And these paths existed completely outside of the traditional Vedic world. So, what really fueled this revolution in thinking? Well, it was like a perfect storm. First, you had a growing frustration with all these super complex and expensive rituals that only priests could perform. Second, a new merchant class was becoming wealthy through trade, and they wanted a religious status that matched their economic power. And third, you had a challenge from the warrior class, which, by the way, is the class both Buddha and Mahavir were born into, pushing back against the total authority of the Brahmin priests. It was the ideal environment for new ideas to really take hold. So, from the simplest stone tools to perfectly planned cities, from ancient tribal hymns to brand new philosophies of liberation, this incredible journey laid down all these different layers of culture, society, and belief. And the question that leaves us with is this: how do these ancient foundations, these deep, complex layers, continue to influence and shape the vibrant India that we see all around us today?